And you are live.
All right, we're back. We will, before lunch, we're gonna look over some intent section. There are a few small things I just want to point out. We never reviewed again the therapeutic school modified language. And I want to talk a little bit about CTE as well.
You're gonna add a new section? I'm just kidding.
I think we can do all of that and more. But now we're gonna talk about sort of new intent section. What this is really meant to do is to lay out the timeline for how this unfolds. So let's put it right on up and we are all looking at 7.1 now.
Well, and I just have to refresh. I think I'll be there. It's up there.
Refresher.
Friday. 7. There she is.
That's St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. So I have not made any changes. This has been edited. What you saw this morning for the findings was not edited. So you'll see some stylistic changes, but no substantive changes to the findings section, with the exception of what used to be number 8 is now number 7.
Okay.
We pulled number 7 entirely and we've turned it into, I'm on page 3, line 3, a new subsection in section 1 called intent plan. To ensure each student is provided substantially equal educational opportunities that will prepare them to thrive in a 21st century world, it is the intent of the General Assembly to work strategically, intentionally, and thoughtfully to ensure that each incremental change made to Vermont's public education system provides strength and support to its only constitutionally required governmental service. So that was wordsmithed former number 7 from your findings section. Subdivision 2 is the plan. It is further the intent of the General Assembly to, in the 2026 session, enact new, larger school district boundaries. In the 2027 session, create voting boards within each school district to ensure school board membership is apportioned in such a manner as to achieve substantially equal weighting of the votes of all voters in the choice of school board members. Provide or enable the provision of the necessary staffing, resources, and support to the Agency of Education, the Secretary of State's office, town clerks, and other integral parties to the election system to hold the first school board member elections within the newly created school districts in November 2028. And provide or enable the provision of the necessary staffing, resources, and support to the Agency of Education, State Board of Education, and other integral parties to ensure that the necessary guidance and funding is in place to allow for a smooth and successful transition between the operation of Vermont's current 119 school districts to the new larger school districts, with new school districts assuming responsibility for the education of all resident students on July 1, 2020.
I might suggest something for discussion, so I can find it. I think I'm speaking as me individual. I think I am would be perhaps more comfortable saying that the voting wards should be done in 2026.
Where are you looking?
I was thinking,
Line.
wondering though about not fully understanding all the moving pieces of this, so that if it could say no later than the 2027 session. Because if the boundaries, we all agreed by,
January
January
15th.
10th of next year,
Yeah,
but then the House and the Senate have to do it, has to get enacted, and then to start doing the voting wards.
it's an intent.
Mhm.
And I think I would like to intend us to do that at a faster pace.
I think there's also, I'm remembering from the testimony correctly, probably we're gonna have to have a legislative subcommittee that assembles to do a bunch of this, the way that a legislative subcommittee is created for reapportionment.
Right.
And so whether they're fully done in the 2026 session, I'm not sure, but they're
Right.
certainly working.
All right, so let us then say in the 2026 session, enact new larger school district boundaries. And begin the process of creating voting wards within each school district to ensure blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah.
No later than the
Blah, blah, blah.
2027 session.
Yeah, I mean, I fear leaving that up to a different legislature.
I don't quite understand what you are suggesting. Are you suggesting that subdivision A for in the 2026 session includes both enacting district boundaries and beginning the work of
Yes.
creating voting
Yes.
wards and then removing B altogether?
I think
Because you
so.
could do that, begin, yeah.
Okay.
I was wondering about the word choice in that section and whether that should be election.
Sure.
Okay.
Further thoughts, comments?
Well,
Wish Casey were here to.
that's our tab, because the funding piece is Ways and Means, so we don't need to reference that.
You mean the enactment of,
Well, in the intent or whatever, you know, that's nothing we need to do.
Vote.
I'm just like, is there anything else on our checklist?
it will, yeah.
Yeah, but they'll do that.
They can certainly add
They can do
intent
whatever.
language.
Right, sure.
We'll lose possession of it.
Right, nothing
Yeah,
else we need to refer to.
I will personally, encourage them to add intent language. To continue to lay out sort of the dates at which things are put into place. Obviously, most notably the foundation formula.
Any intent language around school construction? And its necessity to, I mean, and it's okay if it's no, I'm just, trying to think.
No, I think that's great. I think it's a great comment.
The necessity of it in
But I'm not,
consolidation.
yeah,
Just
Yeah.
asking a question.
I think just having the bill in there probably makes that fairly clear. Okay, so that's intent language.
Are there other thoughts, feedback on particularly the timeline part of the intent language?
I guess, and probably nothing we can do about it, because if you want to have an election in 28, the wards and everything has to be done by May of 27, so just saying the 27 session,
We're now
it's
saying,
okay.
we're now saying we'd like to see that
It's sort of within it, yeah.
be done in 26, however, with this group of
Yeah.
legislators.
Oh, that's right, I forgot,
Yeah.
change from that, sorry.
It's an intent and it's not, it
Yeah.
doesn't hold them to it, but it's gonna be a challenge to do that. Okay, I'm going to, then switch topics. So I just want to talk about, career and technical education. It does not appear in here much, except within the charge to the, district boundary drawing subcommittee. And I just want everybody to be aware of that. Because, like the speaker did that speaker survey, and really, CTE came up quite frequently. And this recognizes that, Commerce has been working on that and continues to take testimony on it, and didn't feel like locking in that there was, we were prepared to lock in sort of intent or anything else with CTE at this point. And so therefore, it sort of just remains in the recognizing that all students need to have access to CTE within the district boundaries.
CTE also comes up in the waiver thing, right? Around
Yes, it does.
class
Yes, it
size,
does.
class size.
Yeah.
It does, yes. And probably school construction.
I'm gonna ask a very freshman-y question, and hopefully there's a very quick answer. I don't mean to like screw us up. But with all of the talk about CTEs and then sort of how much reaction we've gotten in the last couple of weeks, including executively about the lack of a map, can you help me to understand why we can't just take the CTE map, combining maybe the two that are the smallest, and say like, some amendments will fix the little pieces that need to be fixed so that we could do a map now? Like, would that not be a solution to this
Well, that's-
big sticking point?
That's taking us I think that.
Right, I realize
that-
it's a little
that's-
too late.
that's- There are a lot of other problems with using that as a map that we could probably all.
Okay,
Mountain ranges and roads and all of that, so.
the CTE sections doesn't take into account the mountain.
It's not,
I haven't.
it's not the CTE, there, we would have no CTE section.
No.
We just say that when the district mapping subcommittee does their work to take into account to assure that all students have access to CTE.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is, doesn't the CTE maps, the one as it exists now, already do that? And isn't it taking into
That
consideration
does.
the mountain ranges and the,
I can't answer that.
Okay.
But it doesn't take into account a lot of other things.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate that we aren't putting CTE language in here any more than that, because I do deeply believe that we need to do that, take that into consideration. I want them to. But I also feel like in the process of that we're going through to transform public education, this feels like it's rising more for me as a member of the education committee than ever in the past. And I welcome the opportunity for us to continue this conversation on how we merge CTE into our transformed system as we move forward. So I think I'm comfortable with this.
Right.
And I
I'll just
appreciate that.
say, it's also continuing to be a complicated,
Yeah.
thing for Ways and Means to work out on the funding.
Right.
The governor had a plan where some money was held back by the district, some money went to the CTE, so they're even still trying to figure all that out.
Yeah.
And thank you, Peter, for reminding me of this. Along with that, there is also nothing in here about pre-K.
Right.
I do believe Ways and Means will be putting in language about a JFO commission study on pre-K and its funding system, both within the public sphere and the private sphere.
Do we need something in here also? I mean, I know it talks about like close proximity sort of to schools, but do we need something about actual transportation time expectations?
But I think that not for the broad purpose of drawing lines,
Okay,
that would come up, I'd say, when you start deciding within that larger district, where do all the kids go to school?
so we will eventually address it, but this is not the place to.
One of the discussions we'll be talking about next year is, what is the power of a school, who's responsible for what?
Yeah,
The legislature or the newly constituted school board.
okay,
Is that gonna be a local decision?
okay.
Okay,
So CPE, pre-K, check.
so let's, maybe go to the modified therapeutic schools language.
Just to reorient you all. This is section 18, which is an amendment to section 828 in Title 16, tuition to approve schools. Subdivision D adds the term therapeutic in approved independent school. And we've gone several drafts now, so the highlighting is gone. But previously there was no modifier. What I've added is it's an approved independent school that limits enrollment for students residing in Vermont to students who are on an IEP, section 504 plan, or who are enrolled pursuant to a written agreement between a local education agency and the school or pursuant to a court order.
Questions there? Okay, thank you very much for doing that. To next. And what page is that on?
On 44.
44.
44.
Oh, please, yeah. Have a suggestion, you're welcome to bring it up now. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. For the record, Oliver Olson here on behalf of the Vermont Independent Schools Association. Just a small suggestion on this language and perhaps find it now. Oh, thank you. You have it up on the screen. So where it says that limits enrollment for students residing in Vermont, I would suggest to say limits enrollment for publicly funded students residing in Vermont. Because we do have some therapeutic schools that accept privately paid students, parental placed students.
That sounds. That's good.
Good point.
Great, we'll make a change. Okay. Where to next? Maybe we go to the Committee on the Future of Public Education Subcommittee page. If you direct us there, please.
What portion of that? Just the duties, or do you want to talk about
Duties.
membership at all?
Duties.
We're gonna be on page 17, line 6.
Page 17, line 6.
Beth, can you go to which draft number we're on? We're on
7.1.
7.1. Okay.
Do we say 70?
17 and part of the classroom.
All right, so there has been some suggested language. I would say that both Rep. Dobrovich and Rep. Hunter had brought up some issues. Rep. Hunter, if you'd like to maybe talk us through some of these changes. I'm not, there may be a couple of little things that may not
Yep.
have been.
Well, let me see if I can get it all out. I appreciate that. So as this was written in the beginning, we were charging a subcommittee with creating some maps. New districts, new district lines, and knowing what we know that these are going to be fully operational with getting rid of non-operating towns and districts. One could have interpreted that to mean that that are fully functioning independent schools that now operate, for a significant portion of kids in those areas would be essentially left out. any map making and eventually, pushed to extinction. So I suggested this new language which recognizes those schools, and telling the map makers that they need to consider historic attendance patterns. And actually on line 17 near the bottom, I would love to get rid of that word operating.
I think that was the error.
Oh,
Yeah,
where-
okay, so that's gonna need to go. Because I think that, again, I think this was an oversight. I don't think that this was intentional in any way. But if the people drawing the maps are aware of where these vital schools are, then they can be better informed in their map making. So I think that's why you see the yellow places now that say, consider historic attendance patterns in these geographic areas, not historically operated public schools in these areas, yada, yada, yada. Or approved independent schools are eligible to receive public tuition. So it puts them back on the map. And I think that this is a huge step forward because we do have a pretty complex education landscape. So thank you. Thank you for that.
So just maybe Beth, you just walk through the yellow
Sure.
really quickly.
So, starting on line 6, this is the general charge to the subcommittee, and starting on line 9, you list out what the subcommittee needs to be considering when proposing their boundary lines. Starting again at the very end of line 9, that includes educational research, Vermont's geographic and cultural landscape, and this would add historic attendance patterns before a comprehensive analysis of school locations, conditions, and capacity. Then getting into the specific duties of the boundaries subcommittee. On line 19, it will read, provide access to education for their resident students in grades kindergarten through 12. And then adding a brand new detailed charge. To the extent practical, consider historic attendance, and that should be patterns. And geographic, this has been, well, anyway. To the extent practical, consider historic attendance patterns in geographic areas that have not historically operated public schools at all grade levels from kindergarten through grade 12.
Are we, Jim? Being in or reading, or is there more? I just have.
I think there's a little bit more down on page 20.
I'll try to remember.
And then now we're in the report and maps subdivision. These are the deliverables. And the maps need to include on page 20, line 7, both the location of public schools and approved independent schools that are eligible to receive public tuition as of July 1, 2025, and the grades operated by each of those schools.
I have a very small technical question, just sort of in timing of definitions being derived. In this case, would approved independent schools that are eligible to receive public tuition exclude or will be then defined as therapeutic schools?
No.
Okay. Because all therapeutic schools are approved independent schools. I might suggest that we add a modifier just to not clog up a map. And have it non-therapeutic approved independent schools that are eligible to receive public tuition.
Oh,
Is that doable? I don't think the intent here was to map out where all therapeutic schools were.
sure.
Josh, then Beth.
So I appreciate the language in here, and I do see where it helps quite a bit. I don't think the intent language actually does satisfy my concerns completely, so I have some suggested language I'd like to offer. So page 17, section A, where it starts with the subcommittee shall recommend not more than 3 schools, etc. We get to line 17, so subsection 2 and 3, I'd like to replace, add in the 3rd subsection, and then everything being after that just gets renumbered. So subsection 2, I would change it to maximize educational opportunities with the least disruption to students. Subsection 3 would go away. It would turn into provide for the education of their resident students by either operating public schools in some or all grades, paying tuition to approved independent schools or public schools outside of the district for some or all grades. Then the next new line would be number 4, which would be ensure that existing tuition structures by grade level are maintained within each new district for any predecessor district that tuition more than 30% of its students independent schools as of July 1st, 2024. I would then take what is currently line 4 and move that down below that new line.
Okay, so let me ask you this, should we also have a line that would ensure that, all public school current, patterns also be insured?
Well, I mean, you have people who are going to these independent schools for specific reasons currently. We don't want to take that away from them. So this just ensures that their patterns that they currently have, for the reasons they have, continue on with the current student.
I guess I'm gonna push back and say, you are asking for an assurance for one of our systems, and we're taking away all assurances from the other.
I just think it would satisfy the concern where the committee, even with the new language, could still put us in a place that we go back to the current statute and then we start removing, like, all of these schools start disappearing because for a few years until governance is made, they start disappearing because you're following the new statute, because they don't have to, we're saying may, shall, they don't have to do it. We're saying, please look at not doing these things or keeping these things where they are.
Yeah,
So I think this,
unless we're gonna provide insurance for basically maintaining the entire system as a status quo, I don't know why we wouldn't put in insurances for one system and not for the other. And if we put in all of that, we get nowhere.
and I just think that what has been provided doesn't get at the problem that I had yesterday. So I'm trying to provide other language. If there's a way to merge the two and make it work, maybe there's an amicable agreement there, but what is on here doesn't really do the intent, while I think is honest and pure. I think that it doesn't do anything to solve Hunter or my concern.
Well, I think the main concern that you brought up yesterday was the use of the term non-operating.
Well, and how it relates, but we're still looking at it as whatever they come up with. We're not telling them, hey, don't make it so these schools can't exist. We want them to still be able to exist because they do serve a great purpose to almost 4,000 students in the state. Yeah, that's sharing my
I think
recommendation.
mine is much smaller, maybe, but maybe not. Page 18, the yellow part there about to the extent possible, blah, blah, blah. On line 11, it says have not historically operated public schools. So I'm thinking of my situation, town I'm from did operate a public school that closed. What about and they now go to the independent school. So the part about have not historically operated a public school is a little tricky for me. I just say for geographic areas that do not operate public schools at all grades. Because some have recently closed. If that's okay.
Am I hearing a request to do that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Despite what you may often hear from me about our dual system and my concerns about having to bend over backwards to protect one over the other, I support the addition of this language because it in fact better captures Vermont. So I appreciate, Rob, that your
Thank you.
work and thoughtfulness on that. Anybody know where we're at next?
I've lost where we're supposed to be.
We're at the second mandate.
I know we need to go back to school construction at some point, but we're probably not ready to do that.
Back to school construction?
That part about the 30,000.
Oh, yeah, yes. We may just
Let
pass
it,
this out.
pass it as it is
Be
and
amended on the
amend
floor
it
by
later.
us, yeah.
Did we straw poll? We straw polled the construction, so we're good with that.
Changing to 30 over.
I'm
I
suggesting
think
that
we
we
need
do
more
nothing
information.
at the moment, and then once we get clarification from AOE, either have Ways and Means amend it, or we amend it on the floor.
Okay, thank you. So we're done.
You were good.
I'm getting tired and hungry, so.
All right. Let us go to page 26, I think is our next set of yellow marks that are,
26.
that we haven't really looked at yet. If I'm skipping over something that's like, hey, what are you doing? Just, we'll remind me when we get there. I'm just kind of flipping through here.
So we're on section 6, State Board of Education Rules Report. And we are in subdivision A2. This is where you are asking the State Board of Education to update the 2200 series, the approved independent school rules, to make sure that the rules comply with the class size minimum requirements. And then you're also asking, starting on line 16, the amendment to create a process for review by the state board for failure to meet class size minimum requirements and the corresponding actions the board may take for such noncompliance. And then we've added, provided, however, that the board shall provide an approved independent school a substantially similar opportunity to come into compliance with class size minimum standard that it would provide to a public school.
Do we need to say, but not including therapeutic schools here? I mean, we do sort of already in the class size minimum.
You've
sort of-
already done that.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Yeah.
The part we had put in about them being able to have a waiver process. Is that not here anymore, or is that included in that, or am I just missing that?
So if you go up
That's-
to, and, it is Friday, almost noon. You need to fill this out today.
Yeah.
It would be super helpful if I get direction from only the chair for any changes going forward.
Okay, very good. Would you like clear unambiguous guidance?
Yes, I would like
That would
clear
be-
unambiguous guidance. And if I don't hear it from the chair directly, it's not happening.
Yep.
So communicate with the chair, not me. Yesterday, the conversation that we had, I was under the impression that because this language on page 43 is here, where we say the state board may grant a waiver, which matches the language for public schools, that we were going to treat rulemaking the same. You aren't asking the state board to update the EQS standards for a waiver process. So we were gonna not ask the state board to update the 2200 series for a waiver process. The state board can do that on its own. It can come up with its own policies and procedures to implement or execute any of this. But again, this is a policy call on your part, and I'm happy to make any changes you want.
I was not in the room for this conversation. So I would look to the people on my right and left to.
Recall, to be honest with you. I think we're in the midst of some heated discussion at that point.
I think that was my recollection that helps.
Yeah.
So long as it covers that they could apply for a waiver in the same way that
I think
others
that's what
could,
the-
then I'm
the
okay. 'Cause
language
I-
in yellow
That was a part I
says.
really wanted to get in there and I don't want it to disappear.
That's what the intent was.
I just want to be clear that this language applies only to approved independent schools on page 43. It says nothing about public schools. The language on lines 10 through 13 tracks the requirements in order to be eligible to apply for a waiver for public schools. The process of what that looks like, we are leaving up to the state board to
Yes.
figure out by remaining silent on what that process should be. But the standards that they are unable to comply due to geographic isolation or they've developed a plan to come into implementation are the same.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what page?
43.
43,
Line.
I'm looking at 44.
Basically,
Yeah.
D.
So am I hearing that this was not necessarily resolved in my absence?
I think it's resolved.
I think it's resolved.
All right, good. Okay. All right, so we're okay with the substantially equal process languages there?
Those are two different things.
They
Right.
are.
Substantially equal policy
Policy.
waiver,
Wait, yeah, it's
like minutia of process may be different.
The term substantially equal in this draft only applies to the non-compliance penalties.
Yep. Yep.
The waiver process, the standards for seeking a waiver are the same. It's the same language, cut and paste. But you are leaving it up to the state board to take it from there for both public schools and
And-
approved independent schools. And there is no language in here that says that the processes, considerations, whatever, have to be the same or similar. So I can add language on line 14, in a process that is substantially similar to the process that it would undertake in considering a waiver for public schools.
I'm comfortable with the state board kind of
Yeah.
knowing that that's the point. But it sounds like we're good with the language
Mhm.
here. Well done, with me out of the room. Okay. All right, well, let's look at the new state board language. Do we have you?
So we're gonna be on page 47, section 23, rather than highlight the whole thing in yellow, I've just done the section heading and the the section heading. So making an amendment, section 23 proposes an amendment to section 161, title 16, which is the State Board of Education appointment section. No change to the number of members. This is just a drafting convention change. We now 10 should be in numerals instead of spelled out. But we're not changing the number of members. 2 of the members will be secondary students, one of whom shall be a full member, the other whom shall be a junior member who may not vote, all current law. And then instead of all members being appointed by the governor, 8 members would be appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the Senate. 1 member shall be appointed by the Speaker of the House, and 1 member shall be appointed by the Senate Committee on Committees. And then going on to page 48, subdivision 1, starting on line 4. Anywhere you see the governor making an appointment in current law, that language is updated with the appointing authority that made the initial appointment to the expired term. So whoever was the initial appointing authority would always, with an asterisk, because I'm proposing some changes to the removals section to track with that, but would always be appointing to that open seat. And then I've added as applicable with the advice and consent of the Senate, since that would only be for gubernatorial appointees. Again, replacing the appointment authority with the applicable appointment authority. And then making a drafting convention change here to get rid of gendered terms.
I just want to be clear, this changes nothing about the governor's power to remove any member of the state board.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
sorry.
let's go to
lower.
page 49. Oop.
Oh,
That's
The
transition. We can go back over that. Sorry, page 50. So this is just for your consideration. This is the section that allows the governor to remove any member. I have not changed, this language doesn't change that, so I'll just read it. After notice and hearing, the governor may remove a member of the state board for incompetency, failure to discharge the member's duties, malfeasance, illegal acts, or other cause inimical to the welfare of the public schools. And in case of such removal, the governor shall appoint a person to fill the unexpired term. So we haven't changed anything. The new language provided, starting on line 13, provided, however, that the original, and this is very verbose, I couldn't figure out a better way to do it. And you don't necessarily have to do this, but we should talk about the consequences. Provided, however, that the original appointing authority for the seat associated with the member that was removed by the governor shall make subsequent appointments to fill the seat in accordance with section 161, which is what we just walked through, upon completion of the unexpired term. So if the governor removes someone, the governor fills that seat. And when that term expires, if the governor made the original appointment, then the governor would fill the seat again. But if the House or the Senate made the original appointment, they would fill that seat. You don't have to do that. You could just let the governor, I think that this language as is has the potential of the governor filling the seat in perpetuity.
Without that last.
Yes. In conflict with what you're attempting to do with adding the 2 legislative appointments.
Yeah.
So,
Emily, then Josh.
so, just to put it in actual position terms. If someone was removed, someone was appointed by one of the other 2 appointees and was removed within 1 year, there would be a 5-year reappointment by the governor, and then that first appointing body would then appoint again.
This language, yes, there are other policy choices you can make.
Because that makes me uncomfortable.
I'm sorry, we say it again.
So if a member was appointed by one of the other 2,
Yeah.
House or Senate, and they were removed by the governor within a year of the first, the governor will then appoint for the next 5 years. And the entity that appointed them originally wouldn't get to appoint again until, the start of the expired.
And if we were to do sort of like not add this language, then the governor could potentially keep.
I think it.
Well, I'm
like,
not,
It could-
I'm not.
Yeah, no, I know what your point
Yeah,
is.
I'm not anticipating that would happen. I don't think the governor is going to remove people because we're very careful. But because of that, I think, the original appointer should.
Janet.
To go along with that, I had a question. So if we look at that language where is the governor's ability to remove a member for the state board only under the conditions listed there? Like, is that a limiting list? Like he can only remove them for incompetency, failure to discharge, malfeasance, et cetera. So it's not like he can't remove them because he disagrees with their policy ideas.
Page 50.
I would say, this is an interesting question to ask a lawyer. I would say that this language lays out the reasons that would need to be in the notice provided to the member who was being removed.
Okay. Okay. So you're suggesting that that's a little bit murky as to what that might actually mean in practice.
I'm suggesting that the notice would need to contain one of these reasons.
Okay.
Oh, and Josh, I'm sorry.
So, okay. So you're adding this in because where it says unexpired term, it doesn't say that it's gonna revert back to the original assumption, right? You know how that goes. But when we assume though, because the board is supposed to be made up of 8 chosen by the governor and 2 chosen elsewhere, that when that term expires, it would because the board has to be made up that way. You would have
Unfortunately, the board, I think that the statute in current law
We need removal language. You're suggesting that the governor doesn't have to be the person who does the removal. It could be the board chair. That is the obvious. There are several boards, including some of the boards that both governors and I where the only people who can remove a member as a board. I look at the in that direction. If you're gonna have to remove a member, you have to have to remove a member. It has to do with yeah, I just what are you doing for her law? And you know that I don't know if everybody in the history seems like a choose with her. And I think I'm personally comfortable with the solution that you have before us. Not sure. I think whether we need to make more complicated. My concern is simply the original appointing membership. I don't think that was, I don't actually talk about okay, governor being, governor being to remove. Happy birthday, everybody. I would like to hear what others think about the Chester Amendment and to approve it. Feel you spot out for the I guess I think that it provides a little bit of a check and balance kind of for if it's the governor that removes it, I'm not saying like a current governor or any, this isn't about any specific governor. Can remove someone really for not, you know, representing their point of view. It's not ethical, but like it could happen and it could be masked as something. And I feel like this, it is specific, but it's not that hard to, I mean, we see it happen in schools all the time, right? Someone gets fired because the principal doesn't like the way they're behaving and they find some technicality to do it. It absolutely happens. And so like, I think that by making sure that there's just one more layer of oversight, it helps with that, to depoliticize this and help with transparency.
I would like to not overly complicate this. This is already a significant change in terms of the governor having the ability to remove appointees.
I just want to be clear. I wasn't asking to change that.
Yeah. But you would like.
It was only the
one pillar seat.
that was all I suggested.
I'll add that I'm going to go along with what you said before. And I think that's part of why this ways the appointment process, getting replacements in quickly, expediency sake. You know, I had to do on Monday for empty positions that we had to submit names to the governor for appointment. That I don't overly complicate it. I do hear your concern and I do share that in a sense that it could be a very long period of time that the appointee sits there. So you have it. Leaving the removal as it is, and there is a hearing, notice and a hearing. You can't just do it. I don't know that I actually just said anything. Or just
You
went
did
around in
because you're
circles.
promptly another question for Mr. Josh's.
As it pertains to the removal and replacement section only during the current term, I think you should have the answer.
Emily?
So I guess as several people have talked about, complicated, that don't want to overly complicate. it. I do not either. So I'm thinking in my own head, and I'll look to Ledge Council, whether that is literally over complicating it and why. I don't know. I literally don't know why that's more complicated. But I am open to why.
All right, so here is my clear, unambiguous guidance. Which would be, that we will stop here and have lunch because I'm hungry.
Oh, they don't pay you.
And, we have one more, yes.
Sorry, just to food, I might regret saying this, but food for thought over lunch. So if we look at sort of two possibilities, what we have here. And so Emily, are you suggesting we just change on line 12, instead of the governor, just say the appointing authority shall appoint a person to fill the unexpired term, and then we would just remove all the rest of that?
That's what I'm hearing would be
Okay,
the.
those are the
drafting.
That would
two,
be,
yeah,
that would be a solution.
A solution
to it,
for us
which
to-
seems a lot less complicated.
that is streamlining perhaps, yes.
So, would you, after lunch, have that as a, something for us to look at?
Yes.
Which I know is very easy to do. We
Instead of the
looking at it now. So, all right, we'll close there.